o'clock, we're going to get started. Thank you everybody for joining us today, and welcome to the Supported Decision Making training series. This is our 6th one, so we're very excited to be moving along in our series, and I hope that folks have been able to attend some other ones and learn a variety of things about supported decision making. I think next slide.
All right, I'm just going to start off with some housekeeping here.
Caitlin, I messed up. Go back. So I did want to thank certainly the Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network, as well as the Development Disability Council, Mary's from the Development Disabilities Council, and Kimberly Hoga from Detroit Wayne, who have really helped us make sure that this series comes to life and that it gets sent out and people are able to know about it and participate. And Mary's been instrumental in us pulling together the topics as well as all the speakers. So kudos to Mary and Kim for helping us present this to our not only folks in Oakland County, but anybody in the state who wants to participate. This has been an effort of our local supported decision-making work group, who thought it would be beneficial that we have a series so folks can learn about the different tools in supported decision-making that folks could use, so they would be more comfortable choosing supported decision-making as an option, and not just have an understanding about guardianship, but understanding about what those other options would be. So we're just really excited that we're able to do this series, and we've had fantastic presenters. We're going to have fantastic presenters today. And then with that, and my name is Vicki Suter. I'm the Director of Rights and Advocacy, and I lead the supported decision-making work group here at Oakland Community Health Network. So next slide. Okay, Caitlin, you're up.
All righty. So just some housekeeping today. This training has been approved for one social work CEU. If you are in need of that CEU, you will need to complete the evaluation that I will send out at the end of the training. This evaluation also helps us gather feedback on how to improve trainings. So even if you're not looking for social work CEUs, we really appreciate it when you fill out that survey. As far as questions go, if you look at the top of your Teams screen, there's a little face emoji with a hand. You can use that to raise your hand to ask questions. You can type them in the chat. We will be monitoring that. And our presenters are okay, to stop and answer questions periodically. And I also wanted to let everyone know that this training is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on our website. And I'll drop that link in the chat for you guys so you have it. You can also go back and see our previous sessions as well. And that wraps up my housekeeping. I'll send it back to Vicki.
Caitlin, if I can interject for a moment, we do have in the chat somebody who cannot see the slides, so if you could follow up on that.
Absolutely, I will. Vicki, you're muted.
Darn. So we did this. Thanks again for attending. I think we'll go ahead and just introduce our speakers. So next slide. All right, so today we're going to be talking about supported decision making and creating a circle of support as a part of that effort to use supported decision making. We have two great presenters. We had Jan Lampman, who is a disability consultant, has been an advocate and worked with people for many, many years, has a great passion about supported decision making, about person-centered planning, about people having the life that they want. So we're so excited for her to be with us. And then we have Amy Kupovitz, who actually works for our agency as well, and she trains about people's rights, but she also has been a longtime advocate, and she's going to share some of her story and her experiences, which is so valuable for each of us to learn. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our speakers, and welcome to the training.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If you could go to the next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to really hop right in here. I want to just before Amy starts telling her story, though, I just want to lay a little bit of groundwork for you. So today we are going to fill your heads with some statistics like we usually do. And some of you who've been on the calls before will go, oh my gosh, how many times are they going to tell us this? But we really want to hammer home the point, right, about what guardianship does and doesn't do and kind of where we stand in Michigan. So we're going to do that. But the thing we're going to talk about today that is, to me, one of the most exciting ways to support someone is circles of support, circles of friends. It's called both. And so a lot of what we're going to be talking about with Amy today revolves around her own circle. And you'll see how we get into that a little bit with her telling her story. So Amy, I'd like you to, are you unmuted, Amy?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay.
So let's start with you sort of talking about, you know, what your life looks like right now. Can you talk about like where you live, where you work, you know, what does your life look like right this minute?
Well, I have a great life. I work at OCHN right now. I'm working virtually, and I have my own apartment with 24-hour care. And I'm also a peer mentor. And I love living out in Wall Lake where I grew up, and I've always gone to my church. So.
Okay. So, okay. There we go. So when you lived at home with your mom for a really long time, right?
Yeah. My dad died in 1985, and I lived with my mom until 2007.
And so, and your mom passed away, right? In 2007?
In 2007.
Yeah. So when your mom passed away, I know that there were some people that were in your life that had some ideas about what your life should look like. Can you talk a little bit about what people were thinking should happen with you in the very beginning when your mom first passed?
Well, Mom didn't have time to make arrangements for me because she had sundown dementia. So when Mom died, I didn't know quite what to do because I've never heard of Mork. But my neighbor had a disability. Her daughter has a disability, and she said to me, "Oh, don't worry, we'll just put you in Mork."
Okay.
So she explained that they have apartments with roommates and what they had to do.
Okay. Did somebody think you needed a guardian at that time?
Yes, they didn't know how smart I was. They actually didn't know. They knew my mother, but they knew I was going to school, but they didn't know for what.
Okay.
And I
So
went to OCC for my laboratory and my business management, but they didn't know that. They just thought I went to school.
okay. So there was a petition filed, but the judge decided, what did the judge decide when that petition was filed?
That, okay, at first they thought I needed a guardian, but they sent out to the group home, which I had to go into, which I fully accepted, and they sent up a lawyer at the group home, and he said I didn't need a guardian. But somehow I got a public guardian, and I went to court after years to see if I really needed one. And he, after interviewing me, because at the time I sold Avon, and he knew that I knew my how to sell Avon, and so he said I didn't need a guardian, just a conservator.
Okay, so at that point, you just had a conservator, and you still have one now, right?
Yes, I do. Yes,
Okay.
I do.
Okay. So can you talk about, so you don't have a guardian, right, that making decisions for you, you make your own decisions. So, but you sometimes get advice from people. Can you talk about some of the people that help you and that you get advice from?
Well, I have a lot of support from my church and a good friend who happens to be the Wally Fire Chief. He helps me a lot. And then I have friends from, like I say, from my church, and all of Wallach knows me. So they give me advice, but I only take it from the ones I think will give me the best, because they don't know me and they don't know what I can do. And at first, the people I've taken advice from now didn't know me. In fact, I had a friend from on the phone say, "We never knew you'd be doing this," and I'm like, "Oh yes, I can do it."
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. So you have started taking advice from people that have built a relationship with you, right, over time. Yeah. Okay. Very cool. And I love that. I got to meet the Walled Lake Fire Chief someday because he sounds so amazing. All right. So can we get to the next slide, please? Next slide, please. Oh, there we go. So I wanted to talk about what some of the main concerns that people have that they think causes someone to need a guardian. And one of them is concerns involving education, right? Parents hear that when their child turns 18, they won't get invited to the school meetings anymore, or they won't get to help make decisions anymore. Safety is a big one. I imagine, Amy, that people were worried about your safety, right, when your mom first passed away, right? About you being safe in the house. Mm-hmm. Right. Medical decisions. Amy, did people worry that you wouldn't understand or be able to make your own medical decisions in the beginning? Yep. Okay.
I developed kidney cancer 2 years after Mom died, and they when I went to the hospital, my neighbor went with me to drive me, and they asked me if I wanted to donate my kidney to the Cancer Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Oh yes." And I went to sign the papers, and my neighbor said, "Oh no, you have to call." It was my legal guardian.
Mm.
And I'm like, "No, I don't. I can make the decision. What are they going to do with my kidney? They're just going to throw it away. I'd rather have it go to research." So.
Yeah, so that's a huge one. Finances, of course, parents and loved ones and neighbors are worried that, people are going to get exploited, or that they're going to spend their whole paycheck and not pay their rent, those kinds of things. Communication. I have a family member that you have to really know her well to understand what she's saying. And so people think that because of that she must need a guardian. Sexuality is a huge one. When I worked for many years as an advocate at the ARC. And so families would make appointments to come in and talk to me about as they're planning for their young adult, right? And I'm going to tell you what, 90% of the time when parents were wanting to make an appointment to learn how to obtain guardianship of their son or daughter, the main reason they would have, they give the other reasons, but the biggest reason that they would have, and the one that was just this emotional hot button, was sexuality, because they were worried, one, that their child would be exploited in some way, right? Or that two, that their child was way too interested in sexual things, and they wanted to, make sure that they could have some control over that. What's that, Amy?
My mother always worried about that with me.
Yeah. they're legitimate concerns. I mean, they're legitimate concerns. And then, of course, legal things as well. Like, you know, was somebody going to trick them? Is some shady car dealer going to trick the young person into signing, you know, for a big loan, for a car loan that they can't afford? Or, you know, is someone going to, or if they get in trouble in some way, will they not have good advocacy through the legal system, right? So there's lots of really serious issues that families are concerned about, and makes them think that guardianship is the answer. And I think that Amy was able to, just by her little story about the medical decisions, you know, really address the fact that sometimes having a guardian actually can get in the way, right? Can actually cause a barrier, slow things down, or sometimes slow things down. But also, some guardianship does, you know what? Guardianship's not going to stop the shady auto dealer from getting the young man to sign for the car he can't afford. Now, the contracts, you know, you can go back to court and make that contract null and void, but it doesn't stop that negative interaction that occurred, right? It's not going to stop predators from looking for vulnerable people. So we really have to think about what's a more effective way to help people through all of these really important concerns, right? So go to the next slide, please. You know, in Michigan, there are some statistics that come out of the National Core Indicators. These are a little bit old, they're from 2018, but in Michigan, 81% of people who are identified as having an intellectual or developmental disability have a guardian. That's as compared to the 43% that is the national average. We've got to do better in Michigan. We've got to help people understand that there are better options in Michigan. So that's what we're going to talk about today. You want to go to the next slide? So here are some of the things that guardians can decide, and Amy can speak to this, right? They decide where you live. They decide about consenting to or preventing any medical or healthcare treatment, including, like in your case, Amy, being able to even just donate a diseased kidney so that we can do research, right? Determining how and when to travel, how you spend your money, what educational or vocational programs you can participate in, what legal things you can participate in, even simple things like giving permission to have your picture taken and shown for publicity purposes. I have a young friend who was so angry she had a public guardian who just always would sign a blanket consent, which, oh my gosh, which meant that the place where she worked at, like a sheltered workshop kind of place, and because her guardian had signed this blanket consent, the workshop used her photograph in some like brochures and publicity, but she didn't want that. Like, she personally didn't want that to happen, but she didn't have control over that because it was her guardian's decision, not hers, right? Next slide, please. So we know that we all need supporters, helpers, consultants, people in our lives that help us make good decisions, right? That's for all of us, whether we have a disability or not. And circles really can help us address this. So let's go to the next slide, please. So guardianship is a form of substitute decision making. Substitute decision making means someone else is making a decision for you. That means that your own personal rights, choices, freedom, your very civil rights are in the hands of some other person. Whereas supported decision making is like a process that helps the person who has the disability, they still retain and exercise their rights with some help and support from people that know them and care about them. Next slide, please. Even the National Guardianship Association, who usually opposes any kind of guardianship reform, says that supported decision-making should be considered before guardianship, and that the supported decision-making process should be incorporated as part of the guardianship if guardianship becomes necessary. So even the guardians say that there's a better way. Next slide. And again, even in our mental health code, it says that guardianship should be utilized only as necessary to promote and protect the well-being of the individual, and should be designated or designed to encourage the development of maximum self-reliance and autonomy of the individual. And I think that what happens a lot when judges are hearing guardianship cases is that there's not enough attention paid to what else might be available to promote and protect the well-being of the individual, right? And so again, that's why it's best to look at these options before we get to a courtroom. Next slide, please. So before thinking about guardianship, why are we thinking that's the best option? Have we exhausted less intrusive and restrictive options? And have we tried alternatives? And then the other question is, would the guardianship even address the issue that's in play, right? So those are the questions you want to ask yourself. Next slide, please. Circles of support. So what are circles of support? Circles are just, they can be formal or informal. And just really family, friends, people that you care about and that care about you. Could be your teachers, your employers, caregivers, coworkers, random community neighbors, organizations, and sometimes paid staff. And so we're going to talk about how people in our circles help us succeed in life. And I'm going to start this conversation by talking about what I consider to be a somewhat famous circle. In my mind, it's a famous circle. And that is the circle of my friend Tim Bartlett, who he unfortunately passed away some years ago, but he had the first circle in Midland, Michigan, where I'm from. And we learned about circles in 1987 or 88 when we went to an ARC Michigan conference in Kalamazoo. And there was a woman named Judith Snow telling her story. Judith is from Canada, and she is a woman who uses a wheelchair and really has control of just a few things. She can speak, although her voice is very soft. It really needs to be amplified by microphones most of the time. And then she has some control in her left hand, and so she can use a joystick to move a wheelchair. Yeah, so that's what she is able to do. And so she told the story.
Is Jan frozen for everybody or just me?
And she's frozen for me, Vicky.
Me too. Me too.
She may have to rejoin us. She was having some internet issues earlier.
So while we're waiting for Jan, this is Mary. While we're waiting for Jan to come back on, I'm just going to share from one of my own experiences of creating a circle of support. And these are the kind of things, Jan and I work very closely on lots of presentations. So I'm not going to share the exact story that she was sharing, but I can talk about a situation that happened in the Ann Arbor area when I was working there, where literally it was a cab driver who instigated a circle of support for a young woman with Down syndrome that I was working with in what was called the Young Adult Project. And so one day I'm sitting at my desk and I get this phone call, and literally, I will tell you honestly, the man's name was Guido. It sounds like a made up kind of thing, like you would say, oh, I'll call my cousin Guido in. But it was, hi, I'm Guido. I work for Yellow Cab, and I'm sitting at my desk, and so this man I never met named Guido calls me and he says he's from Yellow Cab, and I'm still processing your who, from where, and he's like 5 sentences into the situation, and he says, I work with Erin, and he says the name, and I have been driving her for years, but she hasn't gotten in the cab the last couple of weeks, and I'm really concerned. My wife and I would like to, if she's in the hospital or something, we would like to contact her and, go visit her. And I'm still processing your who, from where.
Hello.
And Jan, are you back?
Hello. Yes, I'm back.
Excellent.
I'm on my phone, so
Excellent, Jan.
Okay,
I was just sharing from Erin's circle of support, waiting for you to come back.
Okay, so going back to Tim's circle, he learned about circles. He had degenerative disease that they thought he was going to die, Finally, he's a young adult and he hasn't died yet. That's how his mother tells the story. And so the family learned about circles from Judith, and they decided that they would like to try one of these circle things, right? So what they learned about circles is that you assemble a group of people that care about you to help you dream about what your future could look like, and then help you implement that dream, right? So Tim.
She's frozen again.
I think we lost Jan again.
All right, so this is Mary again. I think we'll just kind of tag team this until Jan is able to work out her internet. So back to Erin's circle. It turns out that Erin had, this cab driver had been picked her up for work. You know, when it was his first day of work, there was a period of time in Ann Arbor where Yellow Cab was contracted to do the paratransit door-to-door service. And so instead of getting in a bus, they got in a Yellow Cab. And she noticed the first day that she got in the cab, he had a large to-go coffee mug that, you know, in his console, and she was definitely a coffee lover. And so the second day that she got in and he was driving her to work, she had two mugs, one for herself and one for him. And over this issue of coffee, they began conversations, and this got to be habit. She brought a coffee mug for him every day. And fast forward after a year or more of picking her up, and he actually changed his shift so that he could also pick her up from work and bring her home. And she was gone for a couple weeks. And I get this call, not knowing any of that prior story, saying, you know, we're concerned, you know, my wife and I are concerned. And I'm thinking, you're who from where? You know, you're Guido from Yellow Cab, and you and your wife. And it turns out she was in Hawaii. There was a family wedding that she was going to be in. And so she hadn't been, you know, attending work for a couple weeks. This person became so important in her life that they started attending, he and his wife, her circle meetings, her person-centered planning meetings. When she indicated she wanted to learn to cook Italian food, his wife became her teacher, and you know, they introduced her to other people that they knew who became part of her circles. Their two families became very close. And so you just never know where that circle is going to be. And it's a case for inclusion. Being included in the community helps you to build that social capital. So I see that Jan's back, and she will go back to her circle of support in the Midland area.
Thank you so much for indulging these issues with my technology.
Okay.
We have a thunderstorm. We have a thunderstorm happening where I am right now, so that's why I keep getting cut off. So anyway, so Tim and his family decided to invite some people. Tim had grown up in Midland. His mother was a caterer and his dad worked at Dow, so they knew lots of people, right? They lived in the same neighborhood. Ed and Myrna, his parents lived in the same neighborhood their whole lives. So when Tim and Ed and Myrna were thinking about who to invite to the circle, the very first circle meeting, to learn about what Tim's dreams were, they invited 160 people. About 100 people showed up for the first circle meeting, and it was friends. So Tim had 3 siblings, and it was like, who were now young adults as well. It was like a bunch of their friends, like, I don't know, 30 friends of Tim's siblings that were also Tim's friends, because they'd all grown up together. Okay. Oh my goodness, now I have all kinds of feedback. Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah.
You're good now.
Okay. So anyway, so there were those. There were all the neighbors. They invited all the neighbors. Several neighbors came. They invited this guy named Dave Camp. Some of you may have heard of him. He was a United States congressman who was one of the sponsors of the ABLE Act right before he retired from Congress. But anyway, before he was a United States congressman, he was a young man hoping to run to be a state representative for our district up here in Midland. And so he was invited because the Bartletts thought, hey, you know, we might need some politicians someday, so let's invite this young man. And he showed up because, you know, there's voters. This thing could have voters at it. So he showed up, and then he and Tim ended up becoming best friends. But that's a side story. They invited realtors. They invited people from the local chapter of the ARC. They invited coworkers of Ed, coworkers of Myrna, customers of Myrna, you know, just anybody they could think of that might possibly care about their family and maybe have resources or knowledge or information. And so Tim's circle was this beautiful big crossword, I don't know, this big patchwork quilt, I guess you could say, of our community. And that circle accomplished a number of things, right? First of all, everybody got to know each other, met each other, but then people started listening to Tim and what Tim really wanted for his life. This was in the late 80s, remember? So it was before there was such a thing as community living supports, and before there was such a thing as, you know, supported community living. And most people who had disabilities either lived at home with parents or they were in group homes or other kinds of, you know, facility-based programming, right? But Tim's dream was to own his own home, to have a good job that made good money so that he could go and stay in hotels and swim in the pools in the hotels, and be able to be involved in politics, because he really was interested. That's how he and Dave Camp became such good friends, because Tim was really interested in politics and government and how it runs. And so he had all these dreams about these things he wanted to do. And he had these dreams at a time where there were not systems set up to allow for those things to happen, right? And so his circle had to listen to what Tim's dream was, and then they had to set about helping Tim figure out how to make that dream come true. And so I'm going to just tell you the short version of the story. Tim's circle ended up accomplishing several things together with Tim. One, he never had to have a guardian, but he had lots of medical treatments and medical care throughout his years that went very, very well. And his doctors always respected Tim's decisions and understood clearly who it was that Tim wanted helping him in those situations. Tim ended up in his own home, a beautiful house. It was 2 bedrooms on the main floor, and then there was a mother-in-law apartment upstairs. He had college students from Northwood University that one lived with him in the house and the other one lived in the mother-in-law apartment, and they became his close friends. He ended up pledging their fraternity. He never went to Northwood, but he ended up, somehow you were able to do this, I don't know how, but he pledged the Teak fraternity, and he was in that fraternity. And as a sidebar, if you're in a fraternity, when you die, people from your fraternity that are anywhere nearby just sort of show up at your funeral to honor you. So he had all these people, he had so many people at his funeral. They overflowed the biggest Methodist church in our town. So he became a Teak. He worked a really great job at the ARC of Midland for a long time, and then he decided he wanted to start his own business. So I was the HR person at the ARC at that time, and he came in my office, sat down in a chair, and started singing the song to me, "Take This Job and Shove It," because that was his way of quitting his job so that he could start a business that thrived. He went to conferences and sold materials for Inclusion Press, which is a publishing house that sells, you know, books and other kinds of materials related to inclusion and just the disability field. And he had this successful business. He was a Teak. He is one of the, I don't know, he's like one of the only non-Congress people or something that opened a session of Congress by rapping the gavel. I don't know exactly what he did, but he did something. He's the only one that's done it in Congress that wasn't a congressman. He helped impact lots of public policy. We actually now have person-centered planning in the mental health code, largely because of the work of that first circle. We have the ability to spend system dollars to support people who live in their own homes, even if they need 24-hour care, because of that first circle. So circles are not only a powerful tool for helping an individual, right, for supported decision making, but also for helping people achieve dreams and changing and improving systems and communities. So that is the starting point story of circles. Let's go to the next slide. Next slide.
It's at the next slide. It might just be a little slow to show up for you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm there we go. Okay. So now what I'd like to do, and I was going to do this a little bit differently because I had it all set up on my computer, but because I don't, because I'm doing this on my phone now that the storm has knocked out internet service, we're going to do it a little bit differently. So this first slide is a document that you can use. It comes from Charting the Life course, which is a set of tools and principles that are related to person-centered planning, but also building circles. And so Amy actually had filled out these documents to show you, to kind of illustrate to you how to use them. And we're just going to, because we don't have her filled out ones, because I was trying to be respectful, and now we're in this technology glitch, we're just going to go through them. We're going to talk about these tools that you can use to help somebody identify who might fit in their circle, right? So Amy, I'm going to ask you the questions, okay?
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you're using these tools, we think about reciprocal roles. We think about relationships that we're in that are reciprocal, right? So Amy, when you think about sharing love, affection, and trust, and that's like any kind of love, like friendship love, any kind of love, who are people right now that are in, you can name first names or you can say what their role is, right? But who are some people that you share love, affection, and mutual trust with right now?
Well, I have a lot of aunts that aren't really my aunts, because in church, after Mom died, they kind of adopted me. So I had all Mom's pinnacle group became my aunts when Mom died. Some of them have passed away themselves, but I have one that I call Aunt Bonnie, and she's been my aunt for 15 years now. And she treats me just like a niece, and I love her. I have another set of friends who I went to a mainstream school here in Walt Lake. No, I'm here.
Okay, good. Thanks.
I'm here.
Okay, keep going. So you have the friends from Walt Lake. Cool.
I graduated from my school that my sister went to, and after I got released from therapy, Mom and Dad thought it was a long way for me to go to Farmington, so they switched me out to Walt Lake. And I have two friends who, to this day, and one lives in Midland, and in fact, I was in her wedding. I was a bridesmaid in her wedding, and they both come down once a year, and we go to the 12 Mall where we went when we were in high school, and we walk around, have lunch there in the food court, and spend the day together. We call it our girls' day out. Now they haven't been down because of the COVID, because one's a teacher and the other one works in a nursing home cafeteria. But they're ready to come down anytime I say.
Awesome. And then you also have your friends from church, right?
Yes.
Put them in this spot.
Like I said, I have my friends from church. I have a lot of them. In fact, that's where I get my Some of them call me. I call them if they're older ladies and they know mom. I call them my aunts, or some of them nickname me their little sister.
Okay. Awesome. And then what about people that, I mean, you already mentioned the two friends that come up, come and you guys do your girls' day. But like, are there other friends that you just spend time with and create memories together with in addition to the folks you've already named?
Yes, I have one that just moved to Arizona, but we call each other every Sunday. She calls me her Sunday angel. And I'm like, I don't need to be called that. She said, because you call me every Sunday. So we do. We call each other every Sunday because we used to go to lunch together. But she lives in Arizona now. So we, for 2 years.
Oh, what about, so Amy, what about people who know about people in your life that know your traditions and your cultures, and like the people that really sort of know how your family operated when your mom was alive? Who are the people in your life that are those people?
Well, my cousins, they have a few that call me, but I think they have a life of their own. They're all over the country. They know my culture. I'm Hungarian, so my cousin from California just sent me some Hungarian pastry for my. She said it was my birthday, but yeah. But
Amy, your mic keeps cutting out.
is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll keep it.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. So Amy, when you think about looking ahead, the future, are there things that you would desire about, like, the relationships you have, things you would like to see happen?
The relationships, I wish I cherish the ones I have. Believe me, I do. And I wish I could gain more.
So you would like to meet more people and gain more relationships? Yes?
Yes, and as far as my job, I love it. And I would like to work as much as possible and as long as I can.
Well, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the more caring for aspects of your life, right? So if you look at the bottom half of this document, it says, who supports you day to day?
Well, I have 20.
Who is it that's with you day to day, helping you with what you need help with, being able to work and all of those things?
I have 24-hour care. So I do have staff.
Okay. Who supports you like in your work? Like, who is your direct supervisor or the people at work that help you get your trainings organized? Who are those folks?
Becky is my direct supervisor. And
Okay.
I have another one, Adam Furman, who's my other direct supervisor. But they all know that my group home training is my passion. So, yes.
Awesome. So when you think about your financial and material needs, your finances, who is it that's helping you with those issues?
I have
Not your people outside of the conservatorship. who is it that you told me before helps you, like when you're trying to decide stuff about your finances and you want to have advice? Who do you ask?
I usually ask the fire chief. I call Jim up and we talk and
The
yes. Or I have
fire.
another friend. Yes. Or I have another friend who will help me if I need it, but monetarily he'll help me, but I say I'm settled for it, and he just said, okay, if you need help anytime you call, you understand? And I'm like, I got this, I've got my job, I can, I can handle it. So
Sounds great. So then, who do you have, who say is your go-to person to help you stay connected to everybody that you need to stay connected with? Who does that? Who helps you with that?
the people come to me, and I go to church every week, and they just come and they say, what do you need? What do you want? Do you need anything? And I say, no, I can go to the store myself, and they're not used to that with my van. Now, I'm trying to save for a new van because my old van is getting old, and I understand that. So,
right.
But other than that, I haven't gone so much in the COVID because of the fear of germs or anything. But I go shopping.
Right. Amy?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Am I still connected?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right, thank you. Next slide, please. Next slide.
Jan, it's on the mapping relationships with the purple layout. Is that the one you're looking for?
It is, but I still see the blue one for some reason.
Yeah, it might just be maybe your internet's still a little slow. Hopefully it'll show up for you.
Well, hang on. I'm gonna try to right now get on. It's not gonna work. I was gonna try to get back on with my computer, but it's not gonna work. All right, next slide, please. We're gonna skip it because I can't see.
So now I'm on the what can circles help address slide.
So give me 1 second. I am going to actually open the PowerPoint on my own computer because I don't know why. If you can see me and you can hear me, I should be able to see the current slide, not the slide that was 3 slides ago. So I'm not sure why that's happening, but give me a second, please. I'm so sorry, folks.
Yeah,
Jan, in the meantime, Jan, do you want me to, we could go back to the next slide and I can walk Amy through asking some of those questions until you're up and running again?
I'm up and running, so we can go back to the next slide. Thank you, Mary.
Okay.
Okay, so go to the purple slide. Here we go. Okay, play from current slide. Alrighty. So the purple slide is really, you can see it's really asking some of the same questions. And what we often will do with the purple and the blue is that we will have the individual, like what Amy just did, fill out one version, and then we will ask members of the circle who are her closest people that she would pick to fill out what they see, who they see in those various roles, right? And then, then you can kind of crosswalk it and you can make sure you haven't missed that. But the other thing is that while Amy talked about a lot of people that provide her with love and affection and time and, you know, and know her well and support her. I like to ask, Amy, who are the people that you support? Who are the people that you support day to day and that you give advice to and that count on you? So, Amy, who are those people?
Like I say, my girlfriend calls from Midland. She will ask me about things, and different people from church have asked me about peer mentoring and things, and so I feel I'm helping both of them. I just had a call from one of the girls that I used to do AVAM with. Her grandson has medical issues now, and she was wondering about if I could help him be a peer mentor to him, and I was surprised.
That's super cool. Yeah, I mean, really, your career has given you lots of opportunity to, be a caregiver for others, right? To support others and help others. Very good. All right, go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Okay, here we go. So what can circles do what can they help address, right? Well, let's see, Amy, you talked about people in your circle helping you, like with that van, right? Talking about what you're going to do with your van and how you're going to save for your van. How has your circle, these people that we just identified through that last document, how have they helped you with safety kinds of issues?
Well, they know I can't be alone without a caregiver, so they tell me I'm, you know, I'm okay, and
right.
Mm-hmm.
Has the fire chief ever checked out to make sure your house has all the safety features and all of that?
Yes, in fact, when I lived in the townhouse with the roommate, he came in with the first gift he gave me, physical gift, was a fire the thing that puts the fire out.
Yes, the fire extinguisher. Probably all his friends get that gift, I bet.
So that's what you need. I'm like, okay.
So when we look at the list, Amy, education, I think a circle, if you were trying to decide to change your classes that you were taking, right? Who might you contact out of your circle to help you think about what you might do with classes?
Actually, I've talked to many people and they can't believe what I want to do and what I've done in my life since Mom died.
So you would just talk to lots of people in your circle? Like, of the people we talked about in the two forms, is there anybody in particular that is kind of like your person that you like to talk to about school?
About school.
Okay. So medical decisions, Amy, how do you go about that now? Like, if you have to go to the doctor and you have to make some decisions about treatment, how do you use the support from your circle to make those decisions?
I've had big decisions to make, and I've had to talk to many people, but they say I'm big enough and old enough to do it myself. So they leave the medical decisions to me. I mean, they can advise me, but they say, I don't have a guardian, and so.
So who advises you? Who advises you?
My aunt, my friend, or my best friend that lives in Midland. and
Okay.
she does, or the fire chief, actually it's the fire chief that gets in there and tells me you're gonna live with one kidney, and that was for 12 years ago, and I'm still going, and I plan to go for as long as I can.
Well, there you go. Very good. All right. So really and truly, if we look at this list, Amy, circles can help with educational decisions, with helping people stay safe, right? Medical decisions, giving advice and counsel, financial kinds of issues. So ways that circles can help with that are like what's happening with Amy, where she's got some friends and people from her circle helping her think about this van. But also circles can come up with really great ideas about how to do something, you know. With Tim's circle, it was one of the circle members who worked at a bank that first told the Bartletts about how you could, this was in the 80s, remember, about how you could have your bills automatically paid each month out of your bank account, and different kinds of strategies like that, right? So circles can come up with good ideas. Communication. Again, Tim, it was really hard because of his physical disability. It was hard to understand all of the time when he was speaking, and sometimes he communicated non-verbally. And so, you know, he had a circle full of people that understood his communication and could help him get across what he wanted across, right? You know, the idea of sexuality, I'm going to tell you, I've been a guardian in my past life of people, and I've been the cherished circle member for people. And as a cherished circle member, individuals listen to me more if I choose or think I need to give advice about dating or relationships or anything of that nature, right? When I was a guardian, if I were going to try to tell someone or share with someone even an idea about what might be appropriate or not appropriate, often I was met with a lot of resistance because, you know, here I am trying to control their life. Whereas when I'm a circle member and a friend, I don't have to go seek the person out to give that advice. They come to me to get that advice. And so I think that from the standpoint of sexuality, guardianship often becomes one more thing for a rebellious teenager to rebel against, if you will. Can we go to the next slide, please? Oh, and I could probably do the same. Okay. So, you know, one of the key things that came out of those early circles, like when I talked about Tim Bartlett's circle, you may remember I said that because of that circle and others that formed immediately afterward, we ended up with this idea of person-centered planning that then became part of the mental health code, right? It became the law. And person-centered planning is really born out of the idea of circles, right? If you think about, go ahead to the next slide.
You want to go past all these, correct?
No, you can go ahead and put them all up at once. So if you think about the values of person-centered planning, right, we're presuming competence. We're honoring individuals' choices, preferences, and strengths. We assume that everyone can contribute to the community. We talk about the individual's culture. We talk about creating community connections and maximizing independence. And if you think about Tim Bartlett's circle, right, it was all about that. You know, we presumed that Tim knew what he wanted to do with his life. Amy, your friends presume that you know what to do with your life. You said it. You said, right? In a circle, we honor that individual's choices, preferences, and strengths. And in fact, in circle thinking, the whole focus is on the individual's choices, preferences, and strengths, right? It's about following Tim's dream and helping him achieve it. In Amy's world, it's about following where Amy wants to go, right? And so a circle really is a way to honor the values of person-centered planning. Go ahead to the next slide, please. So when we think about the person-centered planning process, right, we're talking about personal relationships. What is a circle? A bunch of personal relationships. We talk about home life, finances, employment, volunteering, education, all of those things that we just identified as things that circles could help a person with. right, are also elements of person-centered planning and are also things that people sometimes think you need a guardian for. But let's look at this. We just identified that circles and the people that you bring together in your life are places where you can get wise counsel and advice and support and help in all of these areas so that you can have a meaningful life. Next slide, please. Okay. I also wanted to talk about independent facilitation because we've talked about that as a part of person-centered planning in the past. But remember at the beginning of the session today, I talked about how there are formal circles and informal circles. Amy, you really have an informal circle. You kind of go to people as you need them, and you hang out with your friends when you want to. It's very informal. You call upon people in a very organic sort of way. Tim, on the other hand, what's that, Amy?
If I feel I need them, I will call. If I can make my own decision, then
right. Yep, exactly. Whereas Tim Bartlett, whose story I told at the beginning, or whose story I tried to tell throughout all of the storm-related issues at the beginning, Tim really needed his circle to be a little bit more formalized, right? And so Tim invited that 160 people and 100 showed up, right? And he had a circle. Let's see, he had a circle for about 20 years from the time he was a young adult until he passed away in his mid-40s. And that whole entire time, that circle was facilitated. There was a person whose responsibility it was to help Tim bring people together, help Tim set the agenda, help Tim engage in the person-centered planning process with the system folks, right? And get that plan of service developed as well as one of the side benefits of the circle. And so when we talk about formal circles, we find that a facilitator becomes a really important element of that. And so in Michigan, one of the services that people can purchase through the mental health system is independent facilitation for the person-centered planning process. And in some ways that can really be extended to really sort of the overall culture of the circle. We used to joke that Tim Bartlett's person-centered plan took 12 months to produce because we met every single month. That facilitator brought Tim's team together every single month to see how things were going, to celebrate accomplishments, to help plan for the future, to help change services or supports as needed, right? He was engaging in person-centered planning. It really was more of a process, and that facilitator played a really key role. So if you really wanted to find a facilitator, even for just the person-centered planning process, I did want to put the slide up. If you could go to the next slide. Yes, I'm gonna, oh, there we go. So there are a couple of places that you can look. There's a website out of Wayne State University that shows, that has lists of facilitators in different parts of the state. You can also check with the prepaid inpatient health plans, or you can ask your support coordinator. But what would be, really interesting to find out from facilitators, right, is, are you just going to come in and facilitate this meeting for me, or can you help me really organize my circle in a really meaningful way? And what can that look like? Go ahead and skip the next slide and go to the slide that says a few more key points, right? So some of the things that an independent facilitator can help us with is helping to generate new ideas, community resources. It's just not about services, right? I think the other thing that happens when you have an independent facilitator is you really get back to thinking about the circle as a circle, because your support coordinator or system people become one of the participants, not the people driving the actual process, right? And so I just wanted to throw that little plug out for circles or independent facilitators for person-centered planning, because I think that they are people that can really help bring together a circle. There's some information about the next slide, please. Next slide. I'm going to, oh, there we go. So here's some information about the person-centered planning practice and guideline if you're interested. Next slide. Okay, and so there's some resources also for you to learn more about supported decision-making, but also these are resources where you can learn more about circles. Various chapters of the ARC across the state of Michigan are very familiar with circles. Some chapters actually have funding where they're able to assist with facilitating circles, not just the person-centered planning process, but actually facilitating an ongoing circle. And then if you have other questions, you know, obviously the Michigan Alliance for Families and the Michigan Developmental Disabilities Council also have lots of information about not only supported decision-making, but also specifically about circles and circles of support and circles of friends. So at this point, if you could go to the next slide, you know, the kind of the final thoughts is, again, to really remember that if we have high expectations and we presume competence, that we are going to be able to help an individual figure out how to live their life and have a great quality of life without needing to have someone else come in and become a substitute decision maker, right? And circles, I think, is one of the really great either formal or informal strategies that we can employ to really help someone make sure that they have what they need and they've got these quality connections and quality relationships that help them to thrive and be successful, and, you know, that can address those issues and concerns that families often have about how their loved one is going to have a good life. So with that, Amy and I are open to any questions. If you want to go to the last slide. Any questions that folks have? Are there?
And you can enter those questions into the chat box, or if you like, you can use the raise hand function.
And I just wanted to
We
share
will call on you.
of some folks that I've had known for a long time. Some young gentlemen, 3 of them decided they had lived with their families, and when they were, you know, in their 20s, they decided they wanted to have their own place. So there was 3 of them that moved into an apartment, and, you know, they had a circle around that supported them. And, you know, for all of us and for all of our kids, we know when they're first out on their own, there's things you have to learn, right? Well, they were fond of pizza. So every night they were ordering pizza first, you know, to watch TV and eat pizza in the evening until, you know, someone in their circle discovered they had really blown their budget big time because they're getting pizza delivered every night. So the discussion had to happen about, you know, if you do that, then you can't pay your bills. And so what's more reasonable for you to do? Maybe you order pizza 1 time a week or something of that nature. But I always think of that story, always makes me chuckle, because certainly those of us who have had kids, or kids go off to college and they, you know, first get that first taste of freedom, they got to learn a few lessons, just like we all do. And those gentlemen had to learn some lessons, but they're great guys, and they certainly enjoyed being out on their own.
And that's a great story, because, you know, I think about that. Would we even consider thinking that our kid without a diagnosis or a label needed a guardian because they bought too much pizza their freshman year of college?
We have a lot of guardians.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Amy. I would have a guardian right now if that were true. We do have a couple comments from the chat. I'd like to read those for you, Jan. So Samantha writes, I really appreciate Amy taking the time to speak with us about her experience. Thank you, Amy and Jan, both. And then Jeremy asked the question, what's the difference between a network of support and a circle of support?
So, you know, it's words. I mean, you know, I think that a lot of us talk about our networks, right? And there's that whole, you know, like in the business world, we talk a lot about networking, and what is that really? Making connection with other human beings, right? And so a circle of support is it's just that group of people that are in your network, right? It's that group of people that you bring together and you connect with, and you have quality connections, and you have reciprocal relationships with. So it's, I would say, it depends on the language, the way you want to use the language.
And we have one more question in the chat now from Andrea.
Mhm.
If we already did a PCP for our son, can we do a new meeting based on a circle of support? We talked about a facilitator with our support person, and she didn't seem to think it was necessary. She didn't discourage us, but wasn't too enthusiastic about the idea.
Yeah, so here's what I think often, you know, I think that oftentimes support coordinators, in fairness to the support coordinator who didn't think it was going to be extra or helpful or whatever, right, don't really understand sort of the history of person-centered planning. Maybe they don't understand the history of how we've built this community. And so they might say that, right? I would say my answer to you is, can you reconvene and have a new person-centered plan? Absolutely. We've got a rights officer who would probably agree with me on the line here. We've got two rights. We've got a rights trainer and a rights officer who would probably tell you.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, in Oakland County, we actually have a contract with a fantastic independent facilitator, Deb Monroe. And you know, when Jan, when you were presenting, my other thought is that you know, sometimes when you have a circle of support or just professionals maybe supporting you, and you've been with them a long time, and you know, because I do this in my own life, you sort of just get stuck with the same old, same old.
Mm-hmm.
And then with an independent facilitator, though, they may help you think differently, or think down a different path, or just kind of get you break out of that mold. Because sometimes I know I need that too in my life.
Absolutely. Well, and even as far as who are the people, right? So when Amy and I first, when she first filled the form out for me, her list of people was really smaller than what we talked about today, because just by virtue of using that form to think about those questions, it makes you think about people that, oh, wait a minute, I hang out with my friend from Midland all the time, right? And it helps you broaden your viewpoint about even what already is in your circle. And so that's another really good benefit of I think, a facilitator. Here's another reason to have a circle facilitator or a facilitator for person-centered planning. One of the things my friend Charlotte used to always say to me, she had this beautiful giant group of friends, just like Amy does. And I'd be like, so should we invite them? And she'd always say, well, I don't want to invite them because I feel like they're too busy. And what it really was is that Charlotte had been told no so many times in her life because she came out of an institution. And she just, you know what? She wasn't ready for the rejection in case her friends said no. So as a facilitator, I said, hey, let me be the one asking, and then they'll say no to me if they want to say no, and you don't have to worry about it. So there's lots of great reasons to add that facilitator. And thank you, Vicki, for pointing out who your organization contracts with. I think I saw somebody's hand up. Did somebody have their hand up?
So Jan, the other let's see, let me check that. The other question that comes up a lot, and it didn't necessarily come up today, is, well, what if I don't really have a circle?
Right. And so that's another reason, by the way, to involve a facilitator, right? Because first of all, so I'm going to talk about my friend Keith, who learned about circles from Tim Bartlett on The Boss. When Tim moved into his own home, Keith noticed that he was getting off at a different address. And so they talked about it, and Keith figured out that there was a circle. So Keith had come out of the institution, and all he had in his life were paid people. He had staff, direct support professionals, a case manager, and like the group home manager, right? That was literally it. He had no friends in the community. He'd moved here and just didn't even know his neighbors. And so when he started that circle thing, you start with where you are, right? And so the first people in the room were the facilitator and Keith and a couple of his direct support professionals and his case manager. And you start where you are, and then you begin to think about, okay, so Keith wants some friends. He wants some people in his life. How can we help people get connected? That's the other, I think, really cool thing about the idea of the circle, is that it doesn't matter who starts out in the room, who ends up in the room over time, right, can change. And the very function of the circle is to help expand it, right? So maybe it starts out, Vicki, with just the person and their case manager and this facilitator, and they just come up with a little plan to help that person get connected in some way, right, to something. And that's how you really, it's work, but it's really worth it. And so Tim had, he had those 100 people that came in the beginning, right? When Tim died, he had, hundreds of people at his funeral. And his circle kept meeting for about 2 years after Tim died. Don't ask me why, they just did. But when I looked at the list of people who were meeting with Tim in his circle at the end of his life versus at the beginning, there were some people that had been there the whole time, but then there were so many changed people, right? New people and different people. And so part of the circle is bringing new people in, and there are, and you create your strategy for how you want to do that. I don't know. That was kind of long-winded, but did that answer the question?
It did, and it makes me think about my youngest brother, my nephew, just turned 8, and he has Down syndrome. And so, I've been working in public mental health for a very long time. So I think about a lot of things as, I hear him talking about plans and, try to encourage him in a way that's not bossy like a sister. But, because he, sometimes he talks about, his son living with him as an adult and such. Well, my brother was not a young father. So, that makes me a little apprehensive about, him being able to have an independent life when my brother's gone. So, encouraging him, as even though my nephew's only 8, what are things that he could be doing and Braxton could be involved in? So so he develops a circle, he develops friends, he has his own interests, and that he gains some of those independent skills that he's going to need when he gets older, that, that we all kind of learn as we're kids. And just because he has Down syndrome doesn't mean he shouldn't, learn those things. You shouldn't be making all those choices for him. So thanks for that.
Great answers for that question. We have a couple more questions in the chat. Would you like me to read those now, Jan?
Yes, please.
Okay, so Elliot writes, my biggest fear is where my son will go when my husband and I pass away. Thank you so much for this meeting. I must get started on making his circle.
So can I just say that, so my sister Mary, we were talking about her a little bit right before the training started. So I have always helped her with a lot of her medical decisions, and she's had a circle for a really long time that included a lot of people, right, that are of hers and my generation. However, also my son, who is her nephew, and she's his aunt, as he was growing up, he and his friends often were around Aunt Mary, right? Knew Aunt Mary and loved Aunt Mary. And so as that generation, that second generation has grown up, Justin and his wife and his couple closest friends that really came to love Aunt Mary, are part of her circle, like a very thriving part of her circle. And in fact, I was complaining because he's now more important to her, like when she's making the big decisions, than I am, which does not seem fair at all, but whatever. And so one of the things that I often say to families is that, when you're building that circle, make sure it's multi-generational, right? Because when I'm a grumpy old lady and I want to help Mary with some of the things she might need help with, Justin's right there ready to go. And in fact, he's already doing it because Mary's already decided he's smarter than me. So definitely get that started ASAP.
If I could jump in with 2 quick points. One is it's never too late and it's never too early to start helping a person develop their circle. And really, as I said before, it is a case for community inclusion. The more involvement you have in your community, whether it's you become a regular at a local coffee shop, or you join a club, or you take a community class, pottery making, whatever, whatever your interests are, you meet people, and those are social capital, social connections. And once you develop a relationship with those individuals, you're building on their social capital as well. You start to know who they know. Example, case in point, the story of Guido, the cab driver. They met in an odd sort of official way, and he became unofficially a very close friend to her, as did his wife, as did other members of their family. And I would relate also to my own family. I have a brother named Kevin, and we don't share the same surname. Kevin and I met. I was kind of an informal, they didn't call it back at that time. I'm dating myself, 40 some years ago when I was in high school. They didn't call it circles of support way back then. It was just the school trying to help him integrate into general education in high school. So I met him in high school, and now I call him my brother, and he calls everyone in my family his sister. He's included in our recent Sheehan Farm family cookbook. And, you know, we've got all Kev's favorite recipes in there and pictures of him, as we do with other members of our family. And recently, when we did his PCP and we were doing pre-planning for it with his support coordinator, he started really talking about, I think because of COVID, the next generation. There was this sudden fear of, what if Mary dies before me, even though he's a year or so older? What if Susan dies before me? You know, and he worded it to his case managers. What if my sisters die before me? Who's going to look out for me? And so I said to him in that pre-planning meeting, who do you think? And he's like, he started listing people, and they were my son and my son's fiance and a couple of my nieces. And he's like, okay, so he is now including them and wanting them to know more information about what's in his life, services, programs, things he wants to do. And, you know, they're becoming even a more integral part of his life in terms of attending circle meetings and conversations. So even though he's 6.5 hours away, and was traveling at the time, he remoted in via Zoom to Kevin's Person Center planning meeting just a few weeks ago. And so, you know, nobody's too close or too far away to be involved at some level.
Right. Right.
And then again, Andrea writes in the chat, just, you know, hugs to Elliot. I think, you know, this comment reflects a lot of our thinking in that we all have that same concern. As a mother, or, you know, of a now 24-year-old, I think, you know, who have I taught him everything he needs to know for the time that I'm not here? And because someday, you know, I hope I go before him. You always think that's going to happen with your child, but you know, what if it happens sooner rather than later? I need to know that he has the tools, the resources, and the connections to have the kind of life I've always dreamed he wanted to have, and what he's told me he's wanted for himself. So that's an important thing to think about early on in people's lives.
Right. All right. Do we have any more questions or comments?
Just a thank you in the chat from Andrea, and especially to Amy for giving your input today. We appreciate that.
Yeah, great job, Jan and Amy. Thanks so much. All right, next slides. All right, just a reminder, if you want social work CEUs, you do need to complete the survey at the end, and Caitlin will be putting that link in the chat. And even if you don't want CEUs, if you could complete the survey, that would be really great for us to get some feedback. Next slide. So we do have 4 more sessions left in our 10-month series. July, we will be talking about some more LifeCourse tools that we can use in supported decision making. And then also August, we're going to talk about assistive technology that can support individuals. We're going to talk about healthy relationships. And then, well, I'm getting some feedback here. Hang on. There we go. Healthy relationships, and then how peer services can support individuals as well to help live an independent life. So please join us for those. It's always the fourth Tuesday at 1 or 6 p.m. Next slide. We also record each of these sessions. We do have May up on our website as well. But if you go to oaklandchn.org and you click on training and then click the recorded trainings, then you'll see the supported decision making series there, and it'll be a week or so before the June one is up. But you can always go back to any of those or tell people about those and let them know that those are available for folks to listen. All of them are an hour and a half. We typically get done right by 2:30. Next slide. Again, thanks for attending our training. We so much appreciate your interest and your attention and your comments and questions. And a second thank you for our presenters. Thanks so much for being with us today. We so much appreciate that.